if any of this stuff is actually going to work, because we will be live, so, Oh, I can actually see the cameras, so that's already a good start. Woohoo!
I see us.
I see us.
Whoa, wait, what? 614p? That's a weird resolution.
Is that what it's showing?
That's what then it probably wasn't up long enough to actually render up to whatever you have it set at.
This is probably true.
It's just such an off the wall.
That is the source, apparently. What the heck? Yeah, maybe I should look at my settings real quick. I think that's what it just defaulted to. Where is that showing? It says the video bitrate's 2500. I mean, we could go live with it. I don't really care that much.
Yeah, we can figure it out later.
Yeah, that's another problem for another day. But you guys good?
I'm ready.
Yeah.
All right, we can go ahead and send messages, whatnot. We're going live. You already did that. Even better. So yeah, I'll just shut up and we can do a show.
Roger Dodger.
All right, guys, let's do this. Right. I just gotta pop out chat, and then I will be good. Get that going. All right, let's do this.
You are listening to the Overwatch League Network, the podcast with Deadeye on all the Overwatch League news and information. The show with Tactical Visor on the statistics and analysis. Here are your hosts, Totally Drunk, Spider, and Slambo.
What is up, guys, and welcome back to Overwatch League Network, the podcast with Deadeye on all the latest Overwatch League news, information, and esports analysis. I am your host, Totally Drunk, and tonight on episode 28, we go around the league discussing the latest Overwatch League news, controversy, all the latest stuff. It's been one of those weeks yet again, unfortunately, for the league. We'll share your answers to our community question of the week, let you know what we took away from Stage 3 Week 1 and all of the debuts from that week, and of course, we're going to break down Stage 3 Week 2 in our weekly preview. But before we get into news and introduce you to my co-hosts, I just want to take a moment to thank everyone who is hanging out here in Twitch chat tonight. And any repeat listeners that we do have. Of course, guys, as always, I have a few friends here with me tonight to help break everything down. Up first, at long last, I am reunited with my soulmate, the man who fared much better in pick'ems than me this week. But Slambo, brother, it is great to have you back. It's been a while, so what's been going on, man? It's been a month.
What's up, nerds? Like, I want to give the biggest what's up nerds of my life, but I don't want to scream too loud because I'm super excited to be back. It has been a bit of a long journey for me. I feel like between the move and some late work travel and some baby stuff, it has just been madness. Or that I haven't been on 5 episodes or something ridiculous like that. So I am beyond ecstatic to be here. I feel like the landscape has changed so much, though, from where my last time I was on an episode to today. We're experiencing a totally different league, just from rosters, and even some of the same rosters just playing differently. And the meta has shifted, and I don't know. It's a really cool time for Overwatch, but there is so much going on, so we have a lot to talk about. So let's do it. Let's unpack it. And no, I'm not a hologram. I'm the real deal tonight, folks. It's happening.
Yeah, you're not hearing him from Audio Abyss or anything like that. He is live here and in person. So, be careful of the monitors and whatnot, just in case you do want to punch him. But, joining me again this week is my other co-host, the man who is adding more Overwatch Funkos to his collection like he's collecting third place finishes in the pick'ems, and that is Spider. Spider, how's it going, brother?
Ooh.
All right, I'll take that one. I mean, I knew it was coming because I read the note,
Yeah.
but I'll take it. It's not totally untrue.
I'm just gonna leave it
I'm
out
only
next time.
missing one Funko now, and it's just the plain old Mercy. Like, I have the exclusive Mercy, so I was kind of mad that Amazon just sent me a message there, like, "Hey, we forgot to send you this. It'll be here in like 3 weeks." It's like, what? Like, I need a healer now. But it, you know, it was a week, man. We have so much drama to go through. I actually enjoyed Overwatch just watching it this week. I hardly played any. I actually got real sucked into Far Cry 5.
Yes,
and
as have I.
it's very good.
Mhm.
But I like Far Cry, so take that what you will. But man, we got to get into this Overwatch League stuff because there was so much to unpack. You know, we went into last week. We were like, here's our preview for Stage 3, and then it went basically in no way, shape, or form how we expected it to go
Not
outside of the game.
I mean, I would say that mostly for like the first day. But like, yeah, it was kind of an unpredictable week in terms of some of the results. Some like were just outright shocking. Others were like, I could see it happening, but we didn't expect some things to go down the way that they did. And this upcoming week is another big week too, because we do have the new event that is going to be dropping tomorrow. We got a ton of new skins and stuff coming to the game. But we're here to talk about the Overwatch League, so let's go ahead and do that as we go around the league in this week's Overwatch League news. So, as my soulmate mentioned, it's the landscape has definitely changed here on various teams, and that does include, some of those last minute swaps and transfers and additions, and also releases when it comes to that sign-in window. And the Valiant were definitely the team that made the, most drastic changes in that roster. They basically overhauled that roster from not quite top to bottom, but they did more extensively than some of the other teams out there. And one of those things that they did is they transferred Silkthread, who is their DPS player, over to the other Los Angeles team. So Silkthread went from playing with the Valiant to now being on the Gladiators. And, it was a whirlwind week for the Valiant, having, they released Envy, they picked up Bunny from, the Soul Dynasty, they picked up 2 players out of Contenders, one which is kind of and the other one is a pretty good tank in his own right. And, we also had someone move into a coaching role that we talked about last week, not to mention that support trade between the Fuel and the Valiant. But, Silkthread is going to be reunited with Hydration on that Gladiators roster, and these are 2 players that did play together last year on Counter Logic Gaming, so, we'll have Silkthread, Hydration, Surefour, and Asher on that DPS line for the Gladiators, which has been pretty flexible in their own right, and really, like, the whole reason that this came to be is because Silkthread was looking for more playtime. And when it came to the Valiant, he was basically on the outside looking in. This is a player that they had looked at as being someone that would be on that sister team that they had been talking about, which we don't really know if that's the case anymore based on, the moves that they did make. But it does seem like the Valiant are trying to get that team mentality going, as much as they didn't really quite push it as well as some of the other teams with those larger rosters overall. But I want to get your guys' take on this. Slambo, you haven't been here for quite some time. Silkthread, he's been a pretty big force when he is in. He has those off-meta picks. What do you think he's going to bring to that Gladiators lineup moving forward?
I think he's just going to fill that void, not to use that particular, term, but just to fill that role that they don't have over there. And I think that Surefour and Asher and Hydration have been great, but they need a little bit more consistency, especially in the Genji role. And then, like you said, he does have a little bit more flexibility where he can play some off-meta heroes that some of those other players can't play. I'm not sure how much playing time he's going to get, so I'm not sure where you guys are at with that, but I feel like we just mentioned a lot of other, great players on the Destination team. So, I really want to see him get a lot of play time. I think he will see some time, obviously, but that's a very kind of stacked DPS lineup already, so I'm not certain how much time he's going to get, but certainly will fill a need. And overall, hopefully get them just above that 500 mark, because the Gladiators have been such that 500 team for the entirety of all the stages. So it'd be nice to see them kind of make that jump above. And I think moves like this certainly will help them depending on the map. So again, I think that's why they probably picked him up, is very much for those niche situations, for those Genji moments when they're looking forward to using him.
Yeah, I mean, he's already made a pretty good impact on the team. We got to see him already, and the fact that they integrated him so fast was actually a surprise. So, after the whole Fisher situation, you kind of see that the Gladiators are basically like just trial with fire, just send him out there and let him integrate in the team that way. Statistically, he wasn't anything special other than his fight win percentage was like one of the best in the in the league. It was like 75%. Now, he didn't play every map that they played, but I think Slambo nailed it. I think it's just consistency. He can feel that role. And then when he's on the field, you don't really know what you're going to go up against. Sure, you can kind of guess based off of, if Hydration's in the lineup, you may see a Pharah, or if, Asher's in the lineup, you may see a Tracer. But, him and Surefour together, you never really know what you're going to play against. So I think that is a good strategic point for the Gladiators. They add a little bit of variety to their roster. And I think, going back to Slambo's point, I think he's going to be very map dependent. I think the whole trade from the Valiant to the Gladiators was just for the pure fact that he was going to see no play time on the Valiant. So I think he was looking for anything and he could get, and that trade window was closing. So Gladiators came in and said, look, we're pretty good at rotating our DPS. You're not going to be a starter, but you're going to get some time. And he said, all right, yeah, if we can work out a contract, let's do it.
Well, real quick, Totem, not to cut you off, I just want to jump in here real fast. And going back to something you said, that throwing them to the fire. If you guys remember, Silk Thread's very first LAN game was his Overwatch League debut. So he's a player that kind of thrives under pressure. So they probably knew that and assumed if they threw him in, he'd want to really show that he was worthy of the trade. So that's all I wanted to say is I feel like he's a good player to do that with. And that's probably why it worked out so well this past week. But anyway, sorry, Totem.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, when it comes to the Gladiators, I think with their DPS line, I think that of all of the teams, I think them and Fusion have been the best teams to really integrate them into their own areas. And, I see Edinar saying, whoa, he's here. Yes, Lambo is here. This is not a work of Photoshop. My animation rigging is not that realistic. So yes, he is actually here. And I know you got to let that sink in. So take that for what you will. But, there is another big thing that happened this week, and that is the Overwatch League All Access Pass. So, if you guys were looking for more Overwatch League content outside of, the podcast and just watching the stream, and, maybe some of the streams from the players themselves, they are now given, like, kind of a more behind-the-scenes type deal. So this is, Twitch and Blizzard cohesion like type thing again. So it's $30 for the baseline price. If you are a Twitch Prime user, it costs you $20, but this is free until May 15th, aka the rest of Stage 3. But what are you going to be getting from this? You will be getting in-game items that includes Overwatch League skins for Moira, McCree, and Soldier 76. Basically, the same variations like we're seeing for some of the other characters for the global unlocks. You'll get a player icon, a spray. There's like 23 Twitch emotes and chat badges. I think it's like, there's definitely like golden, emotes for all the teams and whatnot. There is a pass holder only Twitch chat, so, it's kind of like a less cancerous Twitch chat, but it's still Twitch chat. So you can only cut out so much of that cancer. It's still going to be there. It's just not going to be as widespread. But, it's still Twitch chat, so bear that in mind. Don't expect to be like, okay, I can totally keep up with this, because there were a ton of people that did throw their money at their screen, like they do with pretty much anything at Blizzard, which, we have something else to talk about in regards to that later, because, some pretty big news did drop today. But there is more. They are also doing matchday AMAs, basically, with some of the players. You can basically just submit your question through that pass holder only Twitch chat. They're also doing the Command Center, which is, a second screen experience that they're doing where it has, real-time statistics. They got new camera angles, player point of views. Not the player point of view you would want. It's not like in-game point of views. It's, a camera dead set on, both sides for both teams. So that's
you another... You can watch Surefour and Jake chew bubblegum.
Yeah, you could totally do that. And, before anyone asks, yes, you will have to re-up this for the start of Season 2. This is going to be a yearly thing that you're going to be having to pay for. But really, like, my initial impressions on this were like, okay, this This sounds good. The execution, on the other hand, has left much to be desired. And I'll just say, like, if I had the ability to actually, in that command center, like, second screen experience, if I had the option to actually, like, click on the different screens that I want to focus on, then I'd be happy with that. Because, as some of you guys know, we do YouTube content for our weekly top plays, and I don't want to be clipping stuff on that second screen experience if I can't, just focus on the game itself. Because it just takes away from that sort of experience in that ride. So, like, for me, like, I've not actually been using the second screen stuff for the command center just because I have been clipping plays, and I can't always rely on, the competitive Overwatch Reddit to clip all of the stuff that I would want to clip, so there is that. But all in all, like, I like the idea of this. I just feel like there is still more that needs to be done. The stats are nice, but we need that overhead map, and based on what they're saying, like, it's not ready yet on certain points. So I'm assuming we're gonna get it down the line, but is that going to be the feature that really, like, makes or break it for you guys, or are you guys thinking like what we have right now is a good base to start from?
I want to jump in and say, first off, take my money, even if it's not ready. Like, but we're the wrong people to ask that. We're the audience that's going to pay that extra money. We're the people that really aren't going to scrutinize it. We're not going to scrutinize the price point. We're going to pay for it, and then we're going to kind of say, hey, this is a way to do it better. But not everyone is going to care about this the same way we do, which is fine. We want that kind of, like you said, that private Twitch chat. It's almost, I like your way to describe it, a less cancerous version of Twitch chat nonetheless. But, for me, I think that this is maybe a cart before the horse type of moment where the concept and the money grab was there. It just wasn't ready just quite yet. Maybe they announce it and say, hey, you can pay for it once it's ready, and not even give us a date. Then we're not going to pick it apart as much as we are right now. So would I have liked them to announce it in about a month when it was a little more polished and ready? Yes. Is it free right now? Yes. So I'm not really, shouldn't really be upset, but ultimately it could have been handled a little better. It does have some room to grow. I think all the changes you mentioned, Totem, are perfect, but I'm still going to pay for it, and I'm not going to complain. Outside of this show and this conversation, I'm going to be very happy, and I'm happy with what I'm getting for my money. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but again, that's the bias of the Overwatch League nerd, not a casual fan. It needs to be better for the casual fan, for the everyday person.
Yeah, and, like, for me, like, I was gonna buy this anyway just for the extra Twitch emotes, and, the badges in it are really cool, too. I mean, the chat thing, like, I usually don't follow the chat anyway, so, like, the whole second chat really isn't, like, a make or break thing for me, but I do like that they are doing more behind-the-scenes stuff with the the game day AMAs that they're doing with some of the players. I think that's a great addition to it as well. I mean, really, just any way that we can expand on the programming, just to get to know the players better and just, like, see what their mindset is like with these AMAs is going to do quite a bit for the league itself.
Yeah, I mean, you guys pretty much nailed it. It's a cool feature. It's not fully implemented. You can't expect this to be the final product. I mean, just look at how far the spectator client has come since, initial Blizzard days, initial tournaments. Even from the World Cup, the spectator has gotten better. So I fully expect this to be, we're going to put a feeler out. We're going to see how many people buy it. We'll give them a free trial so there's not as much public backlash. So you can say, well, you kind of had a chance to try it before you bought it. And then, the crowd like us, the hardcore crowd, it will, be happy with the skins, with the emotes, with the sprays, and we'll say, okay, we're supporting Overwatch League. We're hopefully making it better. And, I'm happy with that. I've been using it as a literal second monitor. Like, I have the main game up here, and then I have the stats and stuff on my second monitor. And that seems to work out pretty well. There are a few easy tweaks that many people have already suggested on Reddit, like just shifting the main screen to be a little bit bigger, to improve the single monitor experience. But overall, try it. If you like it, support the league. If you don't like it, I mean, you tried it and you don't like it, so go on Reddit and complain like everybody else.
And it is important to note, like, we have seen, like, this evolution on, like, the stage formats, that we see adjustments to pretty much every stage. I am expecting kind of like the same route to happen with the All Access Pass, because there are a lot of vocal people right now about this, and not getting that top down, map is really like one of the major things that people have been wanting, but like I'm okay waiting on it. I mean, I think that's going to be an absolute like baller feature when it does come out. But all in all, like I am expecting this to kind of evolve over time, and maybe they'll add other skins and stuff for the different seasons as well. Who knows? Maybe this will just be something that they kind of retire some of these skins with each season. I don't know. They can do like so many things with this, but this is definitely not going to be the final iteration that we see of the pass in itself. But moving on to in-game stuff, guys, we did have a couple of suspensions. One a bit more severe than the other, and there was an update on that earlier today, which we will definitely talk about. But first, we need to look at the Philadelphia Fusion because one of their players has been suspended for basically making a slanted eyes gesture on one of his personal streams, that being their DPS player, EQO. So, the Fusion had suspended EQO for 3 matches and fined him $2,000 for that gesture. They revoked his stream-in privileges until June 17th, and, you know, I've never really watched EQO stream. I don't know how often he does it, so it's really kind of hard to say, how big of a slap on the wrist that is compared to, you know, it affecting some other people that stream out there. But, you know, he is donating $3,000 to the Anti-Defamation League's No Place for Hate campaign, with an extra $5K being donated by the Fusion, for a total of $10K. I don't know where that other $2K is in there, but, you know, the league also did fine EQO $1,000 as well. And really, like, this whole thing kind of sparked because Asher caught note of this, you know, kind of going back to the Gladiators, and he's just like, what the F? And then it just kind of spiraled from there. So, you know, we've seen time and time again, these, you know, younger kids, you know, they keep making mistakes. And that's another thing that we'll talk about in our next one, but, you know, three matches in its own right, you know, not like the biggest suspension, but I felt like for this in particular, I think that was a fair amount. But it is always good to see the organizations themselves really stepping up to the plate first and handing out those punishments, and then, you know, the Overwatch League kind of overseeing it just beyond that too.
I mean, come on, man. You have to know better. You have to know this was inappropriate. You have to know the response you were going to get from the league, from your team after XQC. You know they don't take this kind of stuff lightly. And I think Philly nailed the response. They came down on him immediately. They removed his streaming rights. They fined him. They said he's going to donate, you know, to a charity. I think that's absolutely the right response. And it's the same thing that pretty much happened with Tyrong when he made the mistake. Now, Tyrong's was more of an accident, whereas the EQO's was definitely more hateful, I guess is the nicer way to say it. So I think, you know, the whole situation is resolved. You know, he'll be out for one more game now, assuming the suspension took place, you know, at the start of stage 3. So one more game without EQO, and then they'll just put this whole thing behind them, and hopefully he'll learn his lesson.
I mean, I'll try to be brief because you guys really nailed most of the important points here. And, you know, they kind of, well, first off, the Philadelphia Fusion kind of matched the punishment. Yes, there was a fine. He made a donation. They made a donation, right? They're kind of owning it. That's our player. That's our mistake too. That's, you know, someone who represents us. We're going to match that. We're going to make sure we pay our bill. That's kind of a cool way to do that and make sure that they're taking ownership of the mistake and of the player. I think that's a really good message and a way that other teams need to handle this. And other than the moment, his brief moment when it first happened, and he was very defensive and he was saying, I wasn't trying to be offensive. Other than that moment, he's handled this the best as a player perspective. The second statement owned it the right way. No excuses, paid the fine. Doesn't really seem to be kind of making any quips on Twitter about it. Just, again, that's the way you need to handle it as a player as well. Even though, to your guys' point, it should have never happened in the first place. He's all saying he didn't know it was offensive. Come on, man. Come on. So that's all I got to say about that. But I still I came out from this respecting EQO, where in other player instances, I had no mercy. I didn't feel any of that. So I still, I don't write him off from this. He will move forward.
Right. And like, kind of like going back to the streaming aspect of it, like, the only reason that a lot of these things are happening is because all of this stuff is kind of happening on camera, you know, outside of the league. Like, if they didn't have a platform to, you know, stream, we wouldn't really be seeing the suspensions like we have, except for the next one.
Mm.
So I'm gonna outright say like this is by far the biggest deal so far when it comes to suspensions that we've had in the Overwatch League. People have kind of noted like in each stage like these things that are happening with all the drama and whatnot have kind of escalated, and this one is like so far beyond what we've dealt with otherwise. So this is something that we actually found out about on Sunday. So, WrestleMania Sunday, yesterday. And Boston Uprising DPS player Dream Casper has been suspended, and there is an update to that, which I'll talk about after. But the suspension was due to some sexual harassment, post basically from a minor who is 14 years old. And when the Uprising saw this, they sent out a statement over on Twitter. They said that, we take all allegations of this nature very seriously, and as a result, Dream Casper has been suspended from the Boston Uprising indefinitely. So, the Overwatch League had confirmed that, yes, they are looking into this, and, they were pretty much right on it. So, the woman that, was talking about this, said that DK knew that she was, a minor, and he had sent sexually explicit messages through, Snapchat, FaceTime, Twitter DMs, and other messaging applications, things like that. And there was, like, this whole, like, detailed documentation that was posted regarding their relationship online by her. And he basically, like, I'll pull up, like, the quote, exactly what she said. Like, he used his social status to blind and take advantage of me, and she did say, like, yeah, she did send some inappropriate photos to, Dream Casper. And in California, where he resides because of the Overwatch League, the possession of child pornography is a felony. And since then, earlier today, there was another person, another victim, this time a 16-year-old, that stepped forward. And, it's worth noting, like, as of right now, Dream Casper has not been charged with the crime. It's an ongoing investigation. But his contract has been terminated, from the Boston Uprising. So, we've kind of gone from, like, 0 to 100 at this point. I hate to see things escalate to this point. Dream Casper as a player was definitely, an up-and-coming player. But to kind of, like, piss away an opportunity like this, and then to just be, like, a black mark, on the league. I mean, what more can be said? Like, people are doing, some absolutely absurd things, and out of everything that we have seen, this one by far is the most drastic and the most severe, and, especially, like, just in the culture that we live in nowadays, everyone knows, like, this is so far in the wrong, and, this gives a player like Mistakes, a golden opportunity, so I'm hoping he's able to make the most of it, but at the end of the day, DK, you're not going to see him back. I mean, there's no recovering from this at this point.
I mean, as a person with a daughter, and I'm sure Slambo feels this way too, I get mad just talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not even going to touch the moral aspects of it. You nailed it. It's not worth getting mad over. So I'm going to approach this from a team perspective like you did. I think this is a huge opportunity for Mistakes, but it's at the same time, it's a huge blow for Boston. I said they were on their way down. This wasn't exactly what I meant, but, Boston, I think, is going to struggle for the next couple of weeks. Hopefully they've scrimmed enough with Mistakes that he can come in and somewhat fill the role, because Casper, outside of the game, questionable. Inside of the game, definitely was a rising star. So it's some big shoes to fill. Hopefully, see, I don't want to get into the moral side of it because, like I said, it just makes me upset. So I'll just leave it at that. Boston's going to have a tough couple of weeks.
Spider, I so glad you said it, because like the only way I can describe it, and I hate to be one of those people, it's like, you don't know until you have a kid. Duh. I mean, that's life. If you don't have the experience, you don't have the perspective, it doesn't matter what the category, what we're talking about, that's life. So I'm just saying, now that I have a daughter, I feel different things when these stories come out. That's all I'm going to say. So I feel differently. So like you said, I have to kind of watch what I say, because that side of my brain that I'm feeling from right now is not very PC, if you will. So
Exactly.
I agree with everything you said. I won't go any further on that. I got a chance to kind of get on my soapbox for a second. I feel better. The only other thing I'll say is, man, what's so disappointing to me is this kid was like a hero to somebody, to a bunch of kids. Not, I know Overwatch League's not the biggest thing. It's not like, the major league sports yet, but to a certain amount of people, whether it be 1,000 or 500, there were kids that looked up to DK and they were his favorite player and they were growing up in Boston. And that is what hurts, is that this guy like dashed his own hero status with these innocent kids. And again, I mean, that doesn't even count to the victims or the people that had to go through what he's doing and the people he those poor girls he manipulated. It just, man, that what gets me. And I don't want this league to look like the other leagues. But guess what, guys? If we want to be taken serious, we're gonna have to deal with these moments. We're gonna have other players in the future that have bad things that come out. But at the end of the day, let's get them out of the league. Let's put people on those rosters who deserve those spots. And whew, man, I feel red in the face. Like the passion is burning. So he will not be missed. I'm sad that he's gone because again, people looked up to him. But after I found out he will not be missed, let's go mistakes. Let's go Boston, the new Boston.
Absolutely. So, hopefully next stage, there's no escalation beyond this. I mean, I don't know how much further you could actually go.
I told you, Noah Winston's going to take someone outside of In-N-Out Burger, and we're never going to see him again.
I would certainly hope not.
At least we're lightening the mood, but
yes.
Geez,
Buzz killing.
Poor agilities. We've seen him in compromising positions already.
All right, well, moving on to better news, guys. Today was a magical, morning because they did announce BlizzCon 2018, and we got all of the details for you. Of course, we got to talk about it. I mean, yes, there's no Overwatch League actually at BlizzCon outside of, announcements and the World Cup, which will have Overwatch League players, but we got to talk about BlizzCon. I mean, it is, the mecca of all Blizzard events, and it's only once a year. So, BlizzCon is November 2nd and 3rd at the Anaheim Convention Center. So, tickets go on sale for Wave 1, that is May 9th at 7 p.m. Pacific Time. Wave 2 go on sale May 12th at 10 a.m. Pacific Time, with the ticket cost being, that low price of $199. Whew. They're also doing that benefit dinner again for charity, which are up for like $750 when those go on sale. There is no info yet on virtual ticket information, but that will be coming soon, aka Blizzard soon, TM. But, this is, obviously, a huge week for esports at BlizzCon. The BlizzCon opening week will take place October 25th through the 29th, and that is basically like when they do the initial rounds of all of those major global championships for all of their esports titles. And of course, the World Cup is returning this year. So guys, Overwatch League has launched. How big of a presence do you think the Overwatch League players are going to have at the World Cup? Are we going to see a situation where, like, 60 to 70% of the players chosen are going to be from the league, or is there going to be a pretty good variety overall?
I think it'll be a good variety. It really depends on individual teams, who's seeing playtime, stuff like that. So I think we could see a lot of players in the Overwatch League that don't have starting positions get some playtime because it does overlap a little bit. I think we're going to see a lot of contenders players, and I think honestly, the biggest thing to come out of this is kind of what came out of last year's. A lot of the players that aren't on Overwatch League teams are going to be on Overwatch League teams after the World Cup. So that is what I'm most hyped for, reliving that moment when Flower sets up on Hanamura and just decimates a team, and before that we were
don't bring it back up. It hurts. Oh, it hurts.
Yeah, you're going to give
Exactly.
Slambo the shakes again.
Exactly. So I think it's going to be a good mix. I'm pumped. I don't know if I'm personally going yet, but I made plans to hopefully go. So but the hype has caught me already.
I am super nervous because right now with my work calendar, I have a class all the way up to the 4th, like the Friday, and then I have another class that starts in Atlanta the Monday after. So I've got to see if I can get one of those covered or moved so I can make it, because I can do the one where I go Friday and then all day Friday, all day Saturday, leave probably, early-ish Saturday again so I can make my flight early Sunday morning. But I can't do both, I don't think. So I'm kind of like, I knew these dates were going to pretty much be those dates. I mean, we all kind of know what it's going to be, like what first week in November, what weekend of November, but sometimes, you never know. So, oh man, so I don't know. I'm kind of worried right now. I've got to get that figured out and sorted so I can book hotels and then get my butt down there. And then I got to find out if my wife is going to join me. So, I mean, that's just my thoughts on BlizzCon as a whole. I'm very nervous. Clearly, I couldn't even wait to talk about that. I couldn't even answer your question, Totem. I had to get that off my chest. But I do believe that most of the countries that have a lot of Overwatch League players will see those players on stage. I think it just makes logical sense. It's viewed as the top league. So you're not going to see as many contenders, teams, or streamers because now we really have an international global league and we know who the top players are. Again, just based on that status of being in the league, even if it's arguable, some individual players and contenders are better than other individual players in the Overwatch League. It's probably better for the World Cup viewing numbers if they do that. I mean, just thinking business sense, you want those jerseys, those name brand names, transfer it over, more Twitch viewers. So that's all.
Yeah, and if you're looking to get the another jersey signed by XQC, I mean, chances are this is gonna be the next time you'll be able to see him compete on a big stage. But this morning I'm like, okay, we got the dates. I booked all of my airfare. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go from the 30th of October until that Monday. Then I'm gonna do Vegas after.
Vegas, baby.
Woo! I'm excited, but I'm like, oh, that's awesome. I'm gonna get to celebrate Halloween over in California. So I'm like, okay, I gotta bring my cosplay with me so I can wear that on Halloween. I can do a movie night with my PIC when I'm out in Cali, which we normally do every Tuesday night for Twisted Tuesday, so we can actually do that IRL, which would be absolutely amazing. But, the hype is definitely begun, guys. If you haven't yet, I would recommend, getting a hotel reservation just because, the prices are going to get ridiculous at some point, especially at the Marriott and the Hilton for sure. But, you can always cancel, depending on the place. Some people have, a cancellation fee, so just bear that in mind if you are reserving. But, places will fill up pretty fast. But BlizzCon hype is beginning, and, yeah, I can't wait. I will definitely be there, ticket or no ticket. And, yeah, Vegas after. So I am all sorts of excited. And you know what else I'm excited? I'm excited to, just spectate more Overwatch League as we enter the next week. But, we asked you guys this week, we brought a question of the week back, and we asked, which hero do you enjoy spectating the most in the Overwatch League? Are there any heroes that you'd like them to spectate more frequently? And, I remembered to post on Twitter this week, and, the community did come through. So, Slambo, I want to hear these. What did our community say over on Twitter? Who are they looking to spectate?
We had a nice set of response on Twitters I'm happy to share. We'll start with @very_unorthodox. It's either Genji or Widow. Real fun begin.
Yeah,
I think. Yeah, no, I think we know what they meant, but no, I get what they're saying. I'm cool with that. Shrike444 says Zenyatta. No context needed, no explanation. Just keeping it simple. VV Kibu says Zen for those sweet, deadly monk plays. Plus, you'll have full view of the main fight. So Zenyatta's are always in a good position to. Yeah, that's pretty smart. And yes, Spider's got the Bobby Bunlata keychain. Oh, sorry, that's what I call Zenyatta. Everybody, sorry about that. Tim Doyle _00 Rhine, please. More hammer swings. I can't agree more. Nothing's more satisfying. Zenyatta the Lodge Viking says Zenyatta for sure. The hero can and usually has a lot of impact on the fights. But I understand he's not often spectated because he's way in the back during fight.
Yeah.
Again, another comment. Yeah, it's kind of opposite, right?
I just want to step in here real quick and congratulate the Lodge Viking because I know his team, or he's competing on a new Overwatch team. That's a pretty big deal. So congrats on that for sure. But, take it away.
No, nice shout out to the Lodge Viking. Totem with his eye on all the scenes here in Overwatch. Nothing gets by him. Tim the Bearded, more Bastion. Well said, Tim. And at Spanky Hunter finishes off with Symmetra. Oh, wait.
Well, I mean, the only spectating that we see in Symmetra is in the, really the entry room during
Muma.
warm-ups. Yeah, pretty much. Well, I mean, there's a few other people that have done it, but, primarily it is Muma just trolling people. But we did post this, as always, over on our Discord, and, we got more responses there, so Spider, why don't you go ahead and take that away?
All right, I'll start with Shrug. He said, I've always been partial to spectating Sombra. It's fun to see the pros go around being sneaky and all. If I'd spectate any hero more frequently, it would be Junkrat/Genji to see what the pros do on what maps. It's actually a good point, especially with Genji and his flipping nonsense. Darth Obama says, Widowmaker. I love watching the enemy dance around the sites, then pow, eliminated. Blazing Bob. I'd like to spectate someone that's not DPS, and Zen doesn't count.
Wait, hold on. Like, you didn't like, shamelessly shill all of Bob's stuff. You mean Blazing Bob from, Watchpoint Radio, the OWL recap, and prepare to attack.
I mean, I've lost count at this point. The Prince of Sass, which I guess is Totem's new nickname. The Prince of Sass. I'd like a focus on hybrid characters like Doomfist or Mei. See how the pros adapt that heroes play to the meta. I think he means how those heroes play against the meta. And then finally, Ren of, back cap and the back cap. I love spectating Widows just for the intensity of the sniper duels. I'd really like to see a greater focus on spectating supports, though, besides Zen, like Mercy and Lucio. They can be really interesting to watch and give a unique view of the game. Also, I'm tired of looking at Sombra gameplay. So tired.
Okay,
Am
now...
I the only one around here who doesn't care about Zenyatta? Like, I feel like that meme from The Big Lebowski. Like,
Right.
I do not care about Zenyatta. Whether it's good or bad, I just don't care.
No, just to take note of something, the reason why he says that he's tired of looking at Sombra gameplay is because we've been dealing with this in Contenders, and now that Overwatch League is playing on that Sombra patch, now we're kind of reliving the experience that we had in Contenders, which was not that good with the Sombra play, and, we kind of got to see the same thing happen in Overwatch League itself this week, because yikes. Outside of one particular person on Sombra across the board, it was pretty meh.
I'll talk about that later. I have lots of fun things to tell you about Sombra. But my response is Pharah. I just love watching the bird's eye view and watching them hit those like sweet long range rocket shots. But I'm with you guys. I wish they would spectate the tanks a little more. We get some pretty good shows out of Muma, especially when he's on the Reinhardt. Some Zarya, even though we're not going to see a lot of Zarya stage 3. Even some Diva plays. I kind of wish they would stop focusing on the DPS and go around. Now, of course, they focus on Zenyatta when Jonak's playing him because it's basically a DPS, right? So our Boombox, I feel like Boombox this week was pretty much on par with Jonak.
He has that potential. He definitely does. For me, it's such a tough one because I think my list is so long. I think it's just not DPS. It's like so, but I think the off tanks really give you a certain perspective on the fight that's almost the best at times, especially Diva. I mean, she's constantly decision making between placement, defense matrix, and damage, and then if it's damage, it's, again, a lot of choice on where you're outputting that damage and how you're doing it. I just really think you get to see a lot more of a fight from a Diva's perspective because she's constantly changing her role. So I was really going back to Cool Matt on Blizzard World. They did it some time where they spectated him for quite a while in that London Spitfire matchup. And there was like a really fun to watch Diva sequence there. And I was like, I wanted more of this. I want more of this, but I do play Diva, so I feel like I'm biased. So I feel like Roadhog, Zarya, Diva, there's a lot of really cool perspectives and a lot of fun ways to watch the game, particular to those three characters.
Yeah, and the weird thing when it comes to like when they spectate Diva, it seems like more times than not it's in her baby Diva than like when she's actually in her main.
Right.
So like I don't
Right.
go. I
Yeah.
like I know like oh well you gotta be careful of the bunny blaster because it can do some pretty absurd damage if she's left unchecked so she can get back in her mech. But I mean that's not what we're watching Diva for. I mean let's be real. So there is that.
Speak for
so-
yourself.
Oh well, fine. Yeah, you can take your bunny blaster and shove it. But anyway, kind of moving
Spicy.
on. We updated our power rankings, and again, like this has been another one of those weeks where we saw a lot of shift, kind of like in that middle ground. The top and the bottom have been pretty secure for quite some time. This has come as no surprise, but New York is on top yet again, coming in that top spot. Having only dropped a couple of games, it's understandably so. In second, we got the London Spitfire. Again, no movement. 3 for 5, we saw some shifts. In third, moving up a spot, we have the Dynasty, who had kind of a shaky week, but, we'll talk more about the Dynasty and, some questionable decisions. Game 1 this week for sure. In a little bit, we saw Philadelphia Fusion drop 1 spot to number 4. The Valiant moved up 3. That was the biggest jump this week, so they're in that 5 spot. And 6 to round up the top 6, we have the Houston Outlaws, who, based on the current map pool, I'd say has a pretty good shot at potentially being one of those playoff teams. But, guys, again, this will lead into, our main discussion for the week. So we're going to go back and we will, share the results of Stage 3 Week 1. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the stuff that we saw in those games. And then after that, we'll go ahead and preview the Stage 3 Week 2's games, which do have some pretty big ones in that. So looking back at last week on Wednesday, we had the Dallas Fuel defeating the Shanghai Dragons, or the Soul Dragons, whichever you want to call them, because that was a new look roster. That was 3-1. In what was arguably probably the most surprising result, we saw the LA Valiant defeat the Seoul Dynasty 4-0. We saw the San Francisco Shock get a bit of redemption, defeating the LA Gladiators. That was a score of 3-1. And, we got to see, a debut in that one, which is really cool to see. Super was in there. On Thursday, we had the New York Excelsior sweep the Florida Mayhem. That was 4-0. We saw Boston Uprising defeat Philadelphia Fusion 3-2. And then the Houston Outlaws defeated the London Spitfire 3-2. So Houston, one of those teams that does play these Korean teams very tough. Get another win, another big win for them. Looking at Friday, we saw the LA Gladiators defeat the Dallas Fuel 3-1. The Valiant capped off a perfect week, defeating the Shanghai Dragons 4-0. And then we saw the Dynasty defeat the Shock 4-0. And then on Saturday, the final day of the week, we saw the Fusion defeat the Florida Mayhem 3-1. The Boston Uprising swept the Houston Outlaws 4-0. And then the New York Excelsior defeated a London Spitfire. And it did not go to a Game 5 because it was 4-0. Which was another one of those results, like, maybe, I thought that was kind of surprising. Like, I don't know about you guys. Like, normally they go to Game 5 or, at least, London will take a map. But in this instance, not the case. So, yeah, Stage 3 Week 1, interesting week. We saw a week of debuts here. We got to see the new look of the Shanghai Dragons. We saw some of these, new 18-year-old players come in, like Space for the LA Valiant. We saw Super debut for the Shock. We got to see Gaguri. We got to see Zufan Jun, aka Sky, for the Dragons as well. Silk Thread re-debuted for the Gladiators. But really, like, who do you guys think stood out this week? Who had the biggest impact on their respective team this week? And Spider, let's start with you. Who stood out amongst the pack to you?
All right, so I had 3 teams that really stood out. One of them is Boston, so I'm just going to leave them be for now because the last week's match are not indicative of what they're going to play like this week just because of everything going on. So my other 2 are actually the Valiant and the Shock. So Valiant came out and surprised everybody because going into this, we all kind of pegged them as a weaker team, all the roster changes, everything, just everything going on, the drama behind the scenes, people pegged Valiant as a team that the Dragons could possibly beat along with the Fuel just because they were looking so weak. And then they came out and they swept both games. Now, one of them was against the Dragons, but one of them was against Seoul. And just a fun fact, they had a fight win percentage of over 70% on every map minus Junkertown.
Oh, man.
And Junkertown was 60%. So the Valiant looked pretty good with their changes. So it seems like they have righted the ship. But the big one I want to touch on is the shock. You know, because I've been saying it this whole show that they needed a better tank. And then Super came in, and Super looked really good. Now, they didn't go 2-0 this week. They did struggle still. And I'm going to kind of chalk that up to growing pains. And I still don't think they're a top 3 team. I just think they're a middle of the pack team now rather than a bottom 3 team. So I think the fact that they were able to route the Gladiators the way they did and control the game space speaks a lot to how dangerous the Shock are going to be going forward. So you can't really rest on your laurels as these other teams anymore. And that's what I'm excited to see, because the Shock have a lot of weapons. They just haven't been able to use them. But, you know, we'll see what week 2 does.
But yeah, like, you know, you mentioned the Shock, and, you know, kind of going back to the last time they faced the Gladiators really stomped them the last time these teams played, and this was like a complete 180 from the last time they faced off. And, you know, you kind of look at Super, and Super for the longest time was kind of like that player on that roster that they were hyping up to kind of be, you know, their jack of all trades, and we know that he can play a number of roles, and him stepping in for Nomi to take that main you know, one of the main tank spots on that team definitely opened up a lot of space for that team for sure. And we did get to see, you know, one of the more, well, we're going to talk about this hero in a little bit, but we did see some absolutely absurd stuff from Dante this week, which we will talk about later. But he was a definite standout, at least on a new look team overall. But, you know, you can't downplay the impact that Super had. So, you know, did open up a ton of space. Sinatra has been kind of, he's been good at times, great at others, and sometimes kind of middle of the road, but he's been pretty serviceable overall. But Slambo, you know, we saw a ton of new looks from these rosters, some completely revamped because of trades and releases and whatnot. Who stood out among the pack to you?
I think I'm probably doing the obvious pick and probably stealing yours, Totem. And I feel bad about it, but it feels like I didn't notice a Widow. Okay, I haven't seen such a surprise Widow performance since Baby Bay Week 1, Stage 1, until Saya player came out for the Florida Mayhem. I mean, there was an excitement level to me watching it. I didn't even pay attention to the fact that the Mayhem weren't even in that series at all. I just was blown away by some of the shots he was pulling off. There was a couple in particular on Nepal, one to the head of a tracer that was coming up the steps, and it was amazing. So I don't always enjoy Widow play. I think that's a pretty controversial, boring thing sometimes, is we get in those Widow v Widow space, especially from a streaming perspective, like when we're watching the cast. But there was just something about his play. Maybe it was because the cast he's with in Florida has had kind of a trepid past and they haven't had a ton of success. So to kind of see this glimmer of hope, this flower-like performance, you know, to bring us back to the World Cup. So something stood out to that to me. So there's not often I'm complimenting a ton of Widow play, but Saya player was a gem amongst the rough, or diamond in the rough, if you will.
Yeah, and you know, if you would talk to my Heroes Never Die co-host Edinar, you would know, like, I was like, I kept telling Edinar, I'm like, Saya player better be playing this week, because, like, I kept hyping him up, and, you know, Edinar kind of felt he underperformed, but on the Widow, absolutely not. He was a definite standout this week. But for me, like, if you're just looking at a stats perspective, you know, kind of going back to that Dynasty game, looking at the other end of it, on the Valiant, we got to see Space come in and put up one of the most ridiculous stat lines we have seen in any Overwatch League game on the Diva. He went like 75-4 in one of the games, which is just like absolutely absurd. So I think, like, out of all of the debuts that we have seen, Space probably put in the best, you know, debut statistically speaking. Outside of that, though, kind of looking at, you know, the Dragons for a minute. And yes, I know, like, this is still a team that has a lot of work to do. But we actually got to see one of their new players that was a call-up from Contenders and Energy Esports in Damon. who had a pretty good Widow show in his own right when they faced the field, and seeing him basically go toe-to-toe with Effect. And, I wouldn't say, like, one side was a clear winner over the other, but I was just really happy to see a Contenders player come in and actually compete with Effect on that role. So that was a definite highlight moment for me this week, for one of my takeaways. But, other than debuts for players, we also got to see the debut of a new map in the rotation for Stage 3, that being the newest map in Overwatch in Blizzard World. So, it is worth noting that this is on the older Blizzard World, not the one where they changed the location by the pylon, which is, kind of irked us a little bit, because we're like, okay, well, how exactly is this going to look in the Overwatch League? And yeah, it did not look that great. I mean, I'll be honest, like, it definitely was rough, especially by the pylon. But all in all, like, I wish we got the newer version, just because, like, if we already knew there was an issue with the map, why would they push it on, that current patch into the Overwatch League? That's what kind of irks me. But all in all, like, I like seeing a new map, but, like, our worrisome disagreements on the map in itself were definitely brought to the forefront. This is kind of like what we expected to see, and, it kind of sucks. I mean, I'll be honest, like, I wanted to see the newer look of Blizzard World and not the old iteration that is plagued with problems.
All right, so I'm going to agree with you on everything there. The newer version is much better, but I'm also going to disagree with you with, I like Blizzard World. I thought it was a fun map to watch. We got every possible scenario you could get out of that map in week 1. We had full holds, we had stops on point B, we had it go into time bank. Watching the teams try to figure out how to break the second point, how to break the first point. It was fun to watch teams figure out how to play this map, and every team played it differently. Like, there were very few teams that stuck to, okay, we're going to go dive point A, and then we're going to go to triple tank point B and stuff like that. They all played it very differently, and I think that makes a good map. I agree that the new map changes are for the better, because there is a little bit of a quagmire in pylon terrorists where people get stuck, and it is hard for teams to break that. But people felt the same way about Gibraltar. Once you get stuck in that hangar, it's hard to break through that hangar with the 4 doors. So I don't see this as being that much different, and there are much more options than Gibraltar. So I understand why people are mad that they didn't push the new version of Blizzard World, but I personally liked every game on Blizzard World. I mean, we got to see some ridiculous cool map play. We got to see Seagull drop a diva bomb that basically almost won them the map. You get to see these little micro plays in it because it is so fragmented, and that's what I really like. And to Ren's point of view, you get to see a lot of Sombra, so I'm sure a lot of people appreciate that.
Except Ren. So I'm gonna kind of take 2 things you guys said and agree with, like, 2 major concepts. One, Spider, to your point, I think for me, I would rather watch teams figure out a new map and watch a bunch of different experiments go off and a bunch of different solutions kind of take place before our eyes, rather than watch Junkertown, where it's Orisa Bastion, Orisa Junkrat every single match, where we see like these stale metas that evolve that make the users, okay, so I get that. I would rather be on the experiment, let's see some new stuff phase. But to Totem's point, I want to see that process go through on a finalized map. I don't want to see all these crazy experiments of all these maps and then have them change the map and wipe away some of those strategies. So that, to me, is very stubborn to say, hey, we're going to keep homeostasis. We're not going to affect the patch environment every stage. I get that for heroes. I get that for new maps. I get that for major patch hero changes. But to Totem's point, there's zero excuse not patching something like a change to a map. That's so that is like the one thing that I feel like there needs to be wiggle room from Blizzard, where they can say, we'll change some things in the middle of the stage. Not everything. I get the hero patch notes. I get the map, adding a new map, but changing a map for particular strategy reasons needs to happen as soon as it possibly can. But that's all. All right, I'm good.
Yeah, I mean, like, for me, like, the big thing is, it's like, yes, a lot of people are watching the Overwatch League, and with the map changes that are happening, a lot of people are kind of like, okay, well, I want to see how these pro players are going to be dealing with the map in itself. And if they're going to be using stuff that they see in the Overwatch League, it's not going to directly translate to that newer iteration of the map. And I mean, that's really the big thing. Yes, this just went absolutely. We saw a ton of different, like, levels of adaptability on this map, which is always great to see, because that's really one of the standout moments when it comes to map designs as well. But I want to see it taking place on that final version of the map, and not one that's just kind of like, okay, well, we released it and we know there's issues. I mean, that's really the big thing. But speaking of issues, guys, we were kind of looking at the Valiant as a team that, okay, they made a ton of changes. We didn't quite know what to expect. We thought they would be like this huge rebound period for the team. And they come in stage 3, week 1. They pick up 2 wins. They don't drop a single map. They 4-0 the Dynasty. They 4-0 the Shanghai Dragons. I know it's early on, but, this is kind of reminding me of that stage 1 Valiant team. So, with that in mind, do you think this Valiant lineup in its current iteration can be a contender to make a playoff push?
I think it's possible. I don't think they'll make the stage playoffs, but I think they can make a run at the season playoffs, maybe at the end. I don't know if they'll take it all the way. But you had touched on Space earlier, and he put on a phenomenal show. Custa also fit in very well. Mm-hmm. He kind of slid right into that role, and he instantly took the team's best Mercy spot. I mean, he showed that he can play Mercy better than anybody on the Valiant could, even better than Kareev. He also played Lucio a little bit, and he was pretty good on that role. So it goes back to our previous point of, I think the Valiant made out better in that trade. Overall, the Valiant still have Soon. They still have Bunny, and we didn't see either one of those. So that's 2 very dangerous weapons that we didn't see in either one of these 4-0s. So I feel like this team has a possibility. And, that's coming from me. I've been pretty tepid on Valiant as a whole. Like, I've never felt that they've been, that great of a team. They've kind of always hit above their weight. But I saw something in this roster that I think could possibly push them to that top 4 level. Like I said, I don't know if they can contend with New York or London quite yet, but they're certainly on the road.
I think that the Valiant is heading the way of the Boston Uprising. That cohesion, that teamwork, that mindset, but they're doing it with a much more talented roster. So I think we may see a team that catches fire. That's what my head says, guys. That's what my head says. Or I'm sorry, my head. My heart says.
Part of me says that.
Forget this team. I hate them. It's a flash in the pan. It's all luck. They're never going to make it. But that's only because they destroyed the Seoul Dynasty this past week. It was a painful loss to watch. I mean, I get it. It's not the same roster, but what are you saying? Go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, if you follow me on Twitter, you could have seen the cycle that I was going through in that series.
You go through like the 7 stages of like dealing with loss. Like you're going through all the Kubler model of grief or whatever that's called, but Kubler-Ross, I believe. Anyway, that doesn't matter. The whole point is, logically speaking, I think everything you guys are saying is dead on. This team has a lot of the pieces in place now. I think this is their chance to make that push. I think they're a shoo-in for the end of the season playoffs, but there's no reason that they shouldn't make a statement here within stage 3. This is their opportunity to take hold. Maybe they don't win, but I want to see them against, like you said, against New York at the end of the stage playoffs and keep it close. Pull a Philadelphia Fusion for me. That's fine. We all came away respecting the Fusion at the end of the last stage. This is the Valiant's turn to get up in that top 4, top 5 conversation and really just leave a lot of other teams in the dust.
Yeah, I think for me, one of the big factors is you kind of look at this map pool, and they have very good win rates on a lot of these maps. They haven't dropped a single map on Temple of Anubis, which is in this pool. They've drawn 1. They have a 5-2 record on Junkertown. Oasis is kind of, middle of the ground. But they're undefeated on Blizzard World. It's worth saying. But obviously, skewered stats and all. But you look at all these additions that they did make, and yeah, there were some drastic changes to this lineup. They did look better than a lot of their other lineups that they have in the past, and Custa was definitely a big part of that. So, I was just kind of taken back by how quickly they were able to kind of make that transition because, we thought like maybe there would be more of, let's give it a few weeks, let's see how those pieces of, this new roster kind of situate, and they just came out. They 4-0 the Dynasty, despite, whatever look the Dynasty were given, which was one of the most perplexing things this week, which I'm not going to get into because I'm just going to get heated and I don't want to do that.
Open wounds.
But all in all, like, the Valiant did look really good, and regardless of who Dynasty fielded, like, this is a team that is... I don't know if I'd say, like, yes, definitely they'll be a top 4 team at the end of Stage 3, but this is going to be a team that, going into that last week, could be one of those bubble teams that could push in on that final day or that final week, kind of like the Fusion did in Stage 2. So I think all of the pieces are there. It's just a matter of, can they keep it beating the teams that they should? And, if they can do that, then they have a very good chance given their win rates on this current map pool. So I think it's looking pretty good all in all. But, we have to talk about one particular hero that is entering the meta this stage. And, we kind of like... I'm not going to say that we brushed her off in past conversations, but, like, we've seen kind of the reaction and kind of like how things played out on the ladder and in contenders. So let's talk about Sombra. Let's initiate this hack. Sombra kind of took center stage. We saw some great stuff. We saw some not so great stuff. A lot of middle of the ground stuff. But let's start with the good. There was one player in particular that was head and heels better on this role than everyone else. And that was Dante on the San Francisco Shock. His Sombra by far looked the best to me. I don't know about you guys, but there were some things that, like, I kind of looked at, the Dynasty. Like, for instance, like, they had Munchkin on the Sombra despite fielding a Tracer at the time, which was Fleta, even though Fleta is...
AKM from the Fuel, there's big name players who have been on it.
But yeah, it's
but
worth...
not like Dante.
Right. It's worth noting, we've had this transition where in the past, Sombra was usually played by that second support. And if you couldn't do that, then you didn't have the flexibility on that line. Because Sombra was always, considered a support due to the health packs giving you ultimate charge for her EMP. Now, we're seeing that transition to the DPS being brought to the Sombra. Now we're seeing that more assassin-type role, playing more like Tracer Light, getting in and out, really doing some heavy damage, and being kind of like that shutdown assassin in her own right, doing a lot of damage, still getting EMPs fairly quickly, maybe not as quickly as before, with the healing of the health packs, but all in all, Sombra, this is something that we've seen, we saw it in contenders, a lot of people struggled kind of making that transition, so I just want to get your guys' thoughts on her entering the meta. Did you like what you saw out of the Sombra gameplay, or do you think this is kind of going to be a work in progress? Because in contenders, we saw it the first few weeks, and then people just went back to straight dive. Do you think we're going to see a similar thing in the Overwatch League, or is Sombra going to be here to stay throughout this stage?
I think Sombra's going to stick around for a little bit. I don't know if she'll stick around in this capacity. So let's take a look at how Sombra was played as a whole. So her pick rate went from 7% to 25%. So it's a pretty significant jump. It's not the Sombra apocalypse that we expected, but it's still a healthy jump. But she only posted a 42% win rate, which is not the best in the league, but it's certainly not the worst of the league. But the interesting fact is she actually only has a 50% win rate when she uses her EMP in a fight. So such a big ultimate you think would be like Dragonblade, where it has like a 65%, fight win rate, and it doesn't. So I I am hesitant to say that the teams jumped on the Sombra bandwagon like we saw in Contenders, but I feel like there are teams that can execute it. So we will see this go forward.
Yeah. And just like chime in here real quick. I think like for that stat, I really want to see like, well, what percentage of the players on that team are actually getting hacked from the EMP? Because I feel like having those two stats kind of correlate with one another would really give us a bigger picture rather than kind of like not knowing part of the argument.
Exactly. So there are a lot of things that go into Sombra to make her useful. I can tell you one thing that goes into Sombra. How about not putting your Lucio player on Tracer so you guys can run Sombra? Soul. Come on. But overall, I think this is a pretty healthy meta. When I looked at it versus stage 2, a lot of people took jumps. Like Mercy took a 40% jump, Widow took a 12% jump, Junkrat and Orisa jumped 10%. So map pool is going to play a big role in this. I feel like team synergy is going to play a big role in this, and I think we'll see Sombra pop down to like that healthy 20% pick rate where she's situational once the fad is over. But it's not as bad as people made it out to be.
Yeah, fat or not, I mean, what we're seeing is like a new DPS hero because this character, like you said, traditionally fell into the hands of that support player. And now, because of the changes we've seen to the patch, she has a lot more DPS potential. So to some of these DPS players, it's still pretty brand new. They're figuring out those nuances. They weren't allowed to play her in scrims. They weren't allowed to be a part of it. So now we're finally going to get some more practice out there, and some of that practice is going to take place in the middle of these stage games. And that's what we're seeing. So I won't be surprised by the end of the stage if we have a real standout Sombra player. If there's players out there that are learning from Dante and watching AKM and picking up little bits of all these players and making their own perfect version of Sombra. We're going to see that take place over the case of the stage, especially because we know the patch is not going to change. And so there's going to be worth it for those teams to go invest and commit to Sombra. What I like about watching Sombra, though, is that it changes it breaks the dive meta, even though, again, I know she's kind of that harasser on the back line. A lot more times we're seeing her as that just to build the EMP and win a major team fight against a tank-heavy lineup. So I just like the diversity, certainly, and we're going to see that win rate go up, Spider. That's my last thing, is that I know it's low right now. We're going to see some players get some more scrims under their belt, learn again from each other, and that win rate's going to go up. I'm not saying it's going to go Genji Dragon Blade up. I'm not saying it's going to go Tracer win rate up, but it's going to go up. So, that's all.
You say that it's breaking the dive, and I would have to disagree, because the person that, is getting replaced by Sombra is Genji. So you're still basically running the same dive because she is doing a lot of harassment on the back line, using that translocator to get in and basically assassinate the Zenyatta player more times than not. So I wouldn't say like it's a straight out variation of the team comps in that, right?
That's fair, but I guess it's like a different style to the dive where you're not having to rely on the tank following in the Genji, following in the Tracer. You can have her safely do some of that harassment on her own, and her teleport can take her such a further distance to safety. So it just gives the tanks a different role without the dive, and it's not as much as just everyone leap on the Ana, leap on the Zenyatta. So yeah, I get what you're saying, but it's still a different experience for me as a viewer, I guess.
I mean, look at Dante on Blizzard World when they played Blizzard World. Like the caster specifically called out, like, "Can we get a picture of Dante?" And Dante was like half a map away, just like chilling, waiting for the right moment, and then it was like poof out of nowhere, EMP, and they break the point. So it's not dive, but it's not dive. So it's
middle ground.
It's very confusing to my brain anyway, and you guys know me in numbers and complex intellectual thoughts. So,
but really, like it shares a lot of similarities, but it's not executed in the same manner. Is basically what we're saying at the end of the day. All right, okay. So that being said, guys, we got to go ahead and preview the week that is to come in Stage 3, Week 2. So Slambo, since You've been out for a little while. Why don't you go ahead and act as our left guy this week? Let us know what is going down, and we'll share our thoughts on these upcoming matches.
Yeah, and just because I would love to read the show notes here for everybody at home, and it's fair. Slambo, parentheses, if he shows, parentheses, acts as left guy. Okay. Anyway, all right. So on Wednesday, April 11th at 4 p.m. Pacific time, we've got the Shanghai Dragons versus the LA Gladiators. Totem, what the heck am I looking for in this matchup?
Alright, so we got that new look of the Shanghai Dragons coming in, and this is still a team that, in its own right, given the amount of roster changes, is still kind of in that infancy stage. And while there were some definite positive takeaways following their Week 1 performance, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. When I kind of look back at that first week, we got to see Sky, aka Su Fanjun from, Miraculous Youngster. I know a lot of people were waiting to see MY in the Overwatch League, and we got it with him being in the lineup. And I know I'm going to keep calling him Su Fanjun, just because that's what I'm seriously calling him. But I will always say Sky after, not to confuse everyone. But what we saw, because of communication problems on that roster, being that, it is a mixed roster, they're trying to do comms in 2 languages right now, and Kaguri is kind of like the middle ground there, trying to translate a lot of things. We saw Sky out of position quite a bit last week. And when we look at the Gladiators, we know what is going to come out from Fisher. Fisher is going to dive, he's going to find that weakness, and more times than not, it probably will be on Sky. And I just expect Fisher to be aggressive and deal with this backline, which has been the weaker link of the Shanghai Dragons. Now, that being said, Dia will be making his return to the lineup this week for the Dragons. He is back from China. I'm pretty sure they tweeted about it earlier today, so we know he will be there, so that's going to give them a better look on that DPS line for the Dragons. So we'll have Otto, who had one of the more ridiculous Genji plays, or just days really, overall in the league last week. So we got Otto and Dia, so we'll have a better cohesion at that aspect of their game. So, I expect a little bit more from Shanghai this week, given that they have more practice and they have Dia back, which will give them a bit more flexibility on that role. So I don't think it'll be a 4-0. I think the Gliders will still take this one, but I'm expecting a 3-1 in this one.
Nice. I like to see Shanghai moving in a positive direction. Taking a map off the Gladiators will certainly show us the right signs and show us the synergy that we all just want. We want to see a victory eventually for those poor Dragons. At 6 o'clock p.m. Pacific time, we got the San Francisco San Francisco Shock versus the LA Valiant. Spider, what do you think here of the Shock? Do they have enough firepower now with the new roster changes to put up a fight against the Valiant?
I mean, it's possible. So historically, the Shock have only taken 1 map off of the Valiant in their previous 2 meetings, but they were both very different teams back then. So this is basically like both teams playing each other for the first time now. They kind of had the feel, but expect to subvert your expectations. Super and Sinatra have been working pretty well together, but the Valiant have come out and, like we talked about earlier, Custa looked good. They still have Bunny and Soon sitting there, on the bench waiting to come in and show us how to play Tracer. They have 2 very dangerous weapons. So I feel like the Shock will put up more of a fight on this one, but I'm going to give it to the Valiant. I think they have it 3-1.
Okay, I'm sorry that my dog started barking and I think someone was at my house. So I took my headphone off. Was like, is someone here? Which I think someone is, but I'm not leaving because we got to talk about at 8 p.m. Pacific time. The Dallas Fuel are going to go up against the Seoul Dynasty. And I know I think the Fuel is doing everything in their power to really try and win some games. And Unko, while trading for Custa, it's a nice addition, but I think both of those are very good supports. So I'm not really sure they gained or lost anything other than a personality match there, but they are lacking in the tank department. They are hurting in that role, and I know that they are just waiting for OGE to kind of come off that suspension. They've tried to build that consistency with XQC. That didn't work out. We've now got Siegel and Mickey kind of taking the helm on that. We've seen Taimu in that role. So if this roster can just get some stability around the tank role, I think that we will see them in a better position to win more games. However, I think the Soul have something to prove this week, and this is one of those teams that the Soul can swallow whole. And I meant to rhyme that on purpose because right now is the time for the Soul to beat a weaker Dallas Fuel team, while at the same time gaining some confidence, like trying to remind themselves of who they are. So when they come up against another team like the LA Valiant, where they think they should win that game easily and they get 4-0'd, they will probably not do that. That's my hope anyway. So I in this matchup overall, I think the focus is really going to be on who's playing tank on what map and what position for the Fuel. And will we see Seoul Dynasty really prove that they're worthy of, again, staying at the top of their division? So with that all being said, I still think the Seoul Dynasty win this 3-1. Pretty straightforward. All right, moving on to Thursday, April 12th. We start back at 4 p.m. Pacific time. We've got the Boston Uprising versus the New York Excelsior. This is one of the rivalries we were looking forward to when the league was announced. So what do you think, Totem? What's going on here?
Well, for one, I wouldn't say it's been that much of a rivalry. That being said,
I said when it was announced, like we wanted the New York-Boston thing to be. I didn't say we've seen it formed over the past days.
It's not there yet. But I will say this: Boston, I feel like throughout this season they have really dispelled that notion that they are a bottom team, like a lot of the community expected them to be at the start of the season, and a lot of that is just due to their strong performances in that dive-centric meta. Now, yes, we're kind of entering the Sombra Tracer meta, but, you know, we look at Dreamcasper being released from this team, that means Mistakes is going to be coming in and having to step up in a pretty big way. You know, he's going to have to bring that Tracer, he's going to have to bring the Pharah and the Widowmaker, and yeah, you kind of look at the opposite end of that, and who's going to be going up against and dueling? Libero. You know, the flex god DPS himself. You know, he's the elite flex DPS in the league right now, and that is a very tall order for Mistakes to kind of go up against in his return to the lineup. So, you know, I kind of look at this in two ways. Well, one, I think outright Libero's going to have the advantage, you know, facing Mistakes regardless. And then you kind of look at the other end of the DPS, and you have Sebiobi, who a lot of the times has just been kind of like left unchecked. So if that same thing happens, I'm expecting this to be a very long night for that Boston support line. And I know Boston has taken some maps off of New York in the past, but given how Excelsior have looked, I think they're going to 4-0 them in this one. New York should take this and continue that winning streak against Boston.
You know, I wish I could say otherwise, and I'm sorry if you guys can hear my baby in the background. I don't know if she's coming through. New house, different setup here. I'm not as hidden away. So anyway, I just apologize if you guys hear a screaming infant. But Totem, I can't agree more. I wish this was more of a rivalry, and it's not. And I think this is the worst time for these two teams to play. So at 6 p.m. Pacific time, we've got the London Spitfire versus an up-and-coming, exciting to watch Florida Mayhem fighter. Keep me posted. What's going on here?
All right, so London is 0-2 in Stage 3, so just think about that for a second. And then they're coming up against Florida, so they're going to be looking for a win, and they are going to be very hungry for it. You know, Florida has kind of been stumped by London's aggression in the past, so I don't expect too much to change with their additions. I mean, Saya player will give them a little more firepower on the Widow, as we talked about earlier. But I think London's going to make a statement that says, you know, we're still in Stage 3, even though we lost our first two games. And I think they're going to go 4-0 on this one.
I definitely think London needs that after a tough loss to New York. So this is, again, one of those confidence boosters potentially for them. So to round off Thursday, April 12th, we've got the Philadelphia Fusion versus the Houston Outlaws at 8 p.m. Pacific time. This to me is, it's kind of weird because neither of these teams, we always kind of thought of both of these teams as kind of the middle of the pack. I think they were gatekeepers, if you will, and their records are very close together overall. So, I mean, there's really a one-game difference between both these teams overall. And Houston has kind of got the best team with the worst record, where that team has lost more close matchups than I think they should have. They've won some games they probably should have not won. But we're going to see them make an overall push as this stage goes on, especially with the addition of Arhan. Again, we're going to see that kind of come to fruition a little bit later down the line. And they're a really fun team to watch. And again, the best worst team, but Philadelphia is kind of the best team again, or one of the worst teams with the best record, if that makes any sense, where I think their record's a little better than they really are. But then again, I feel like that was my opinion as the first two stages started, but now we've seen kind of Philly grow into this new team. So essentially what I'm saying is both of these teams are confusing to me. They're just a little bit of everything, like bad to great to good to still learning. This matchup, though, is going to be super exciting to watch. I anticipate, even with the EQO suspension, that the Fusion will be in the driver's seat, but this will be a 3-2 game. It will come down to the last map. Houston plays teams a lot closer than other teams do, and the Fusion will barely eke it out, even with some of the issues they have going on. And even though they're two middle-of-the-pack teams, to go back to where I started, this is one of the most fun games to probably watch all week, just from an entertainment perspective. So anyway, all right. I'm crazy. I like the middle of the pack is sometimes more fun to watch than the best and the worst, right?
Well, that's because that's where all the movement is.
Exactly. One game difference where this can change who goes to the playoffs at the end of the season. So it's very crucial how the matchup of that one comes. So on Friday the 13th, right? Ooh, a day that I bet you it'll be all upsets on Friday the 13th. And it's going to start at 4 p.m. Pacific with the LA Valiant and the Dallas Fuel. And so are the Dallas Fuel gonna pull the Jason, come back from the grave and take out the Valiant?
Well, I don't know. Like, that depends on how far entrenched in the dirt the Fuel are right now. I mean, let's be real here. So, okay, so we had the Valiant, two very big 4-0s. One more impressive than the other. I mean, let's be real here. We saw Space putting up, one of the better debuts here in the Overwatch League. And, Valiant making a ton of moves, but OGE should be making his debut this week for the Dallas Field tank line. And, when you hear Kai talk about the Fuel and a tank line, they're saying, like, OG is going to be the guy. He's going to come in, he's going to be the shot caller. He will be the driving force behind this team. Do I believe Kai? I don't know. Like, I don't know how OG is going to do. I don't know how he's going to gel with the team. And, it's hard to feel very confident with the Fuel right now, even given the fact that, they are getting that final piece of the puzzle that they feel like is going to be, that driving force for them. Now, that being said, if OGE comes in, well, what is that going to mean for the off-tank spot on this team? Is Mickey going to get that position? Is Seagull going to get the spot? Because, Seagull has kind of just been in there just because of unforeseen, circumstance, really, that was kind of just like, okay, well, time was taking too long, so Seagull, you're in. So, I don't know. I think Seagull's looked pretty good. I think you could argue that Seagull should start over Mickey on an off-tank role. But, who knows? Like, the Fuel could start either of them at this point. So, if you look at it from this perspective, like, okay, we gotta look at the tank line. I think Space is going to be able to open up more Space, not to, re-say his name, but I think he's going to open up more room for the DPS than Mickey or Seagull is going to be able to for that Fuel line. Now, that being said, I do think the Fuel are going to start out to look better in this stage, but this is still a team that is a work in progress, and, the Valiant, they 4-0'd the Dynasty, they 4-0'd the Dragons. The Fuel have looked better than the Dragons at times, but on the same level as them at other times, so I really don't know what to expect from the Fuel at this point. I just hope that OGE is going to be the answer, because I want to see them kind of come back to form. So, with that in mind, I'll give the Fuel a map in this one. I think the Valiant will take it 3-1, but the Valiant are looking like they are a team on the rise. I think they'll win this one, and kind of looking, who's their next opponent this week?
Let's see.
The
Valiant
play Soul earlier, and the Valiant play.
They play the Gladiators in week 3. That's the next matchup for the Valiant. Are you saying for Seoul, they play the Shock next?
Yeah, whatever. Okay, well, regardless, like I think
Regardless,
the
okay,
Valiant,
yeah.
the Valiant should be coming out with a winning record. I think they'll still be in the top 3 after this week, regardless of win or loss.
All right, fair enough. Spider, as we move on our scary Friday the 13th, we have at 6 p.m. Pacific time the San Francisco Shock versus the Shanghai Dragons. Spider, I mean, is this the game? Is this the time Shanghai gets the win? This is a team at the bottom 3.
It's possible. I won't say no, but I mean, no. Gagiri and Fearless were kind of the talk going into the start of Stage 3. They were going to revitalize this roster because Shanghai's tank lineup has historically melted as soon as anything looked at them. So Gagiri and Fearless definitely showed that they can, play that role a little bit better. But San Francisco showed us that their tank line is also a lot better. So outside of maybe some highlights for Otto and Dia, I think Shock are going to take this one 3-1.
All right. Keeping it pretty straightforward, keeping it pretty simple. It's not that those two teams are not the most exciting in the league, and the storylines just don't usually follow if there's not, something to really chase. So I definitely respect that. Finishing us off on Friday at 8 p.m. Pacific time, another game I get to talk about, the Seoul Dynasty versus the Los Angeles Gladiators. Wow. I mean, you would have, if I was looking at this matchup on the calendar during last stage, I'm like, Seoul, hard 4-0, easy win. But the Seoul have kind of been on shakier ground. They haven't won as many games against the mid and top teams. They often drop maps to teams they shouldn't. And Gladiators is one of those teams that takes maps from teams they shouldn't. And especially with the addition of Void and Silk Thread, I think the Gladiators are a lot different looking than they were the last time these two teams played. And I anticipate that the Gladiators are going to end up taking a map off of Seoul. But I think that the Seoul will end up taking this 3-1. But that third game they win will basically be on the razor's edge, where instead of it going to a 5th map, it'll barely go into the Seoul's favor. The Gladiators will look really good in that matchup. Silk Thread will play some Genji and show the Dynasty what's up. But in the end, the Dynasty will prevail. And they'll put themselves back on a path to victory to ensure that they have complete control of the Pacific Division. Here it comes. They're gonna keep their lead on the Valiant with this game. And that will pretty much take us into a epic day of games, an epic, awesome day of games on Saturday, April 14th. We start at 1 p.m. Pacific time with the London Spitfire versus the Philadelphia Fusion. Totem, break it down.
All right, so kind of like looking back at how these two teams have fared, Spitfire currently has the lead in this series that is 2-1. And those 2 wins were 4-0 finishes for the Spitfire. So, we're going to be seeing... we saw the Fusion really take it to the Spitfire the last time these two teams fought. But that was really off of the back of Carpe, who was popping off in that series, while EQO was basically doing all of the work on the ground on the Tracer. And then, you have to look at it like this. Well, EQO isn't going to be in this week. He's dealing with his suspension overall. And while I think Snow is a great stand-in overall, I don't think he has quite had the same impact compared to EQO overall. But that being said, Snow was also the one that came in and won them the most important map in the map 5. So, it's hard to say. I don't think there's as much on the line. So will Snillo still be able to perform to the same level that he did in that series? I don't know. But I am expecting a very close series one way or another. I don't think this is going to go the 4-0 route like we've seen in the past. I'm expecting these teams to go another Game 5. But I'm just mostly looking forward to seeing Carpe doing that 1v1 with Birdring. Again, these two are always delivering on the main stage. So I think Spitfire are going to take this one. I have it 3-2. So, they'll take that 3-1 series edge overall. But I'm expecting the Fusion to put up a pretty good fight. They definitely bring the aggression, and so do the Spitfire. So really, this one should be a slobber knocker at the end of the day.
I think slobber knocker has potential to be overused, but this is 100% a slobber knocker because I think London is thinking of the stage 2 playoffs, and I think they really want to really make sure Philadelphia Fusion know who the boss is on that front. So this is going to be a kind of a grudge match. I really do believe so. So well said. Spider, as we head to 3 p.m. Pacific time, your last match to talk about, the New York Excelsior versus the Houston Outlaws, a rematch of this season of the Stage 1 playoffs. Two teams that traditionally have kept it very close. Is it going to be the same stage, or are these two teams, have they diverged?
I mean, you look at historically what's happened, and you had brought up their previous matches have been very close. The one thing that separates these two teams, I hate to bring it up again, but it's the tracer play. Houston's tracer play has been preyed upon by New York, specifically CIOB.
They have Linkser now on the roll. They actually have a player.
So they have Arhan in there, and that frees up Linkser to play Tracer. So this could be a different looking Houston team. I would like to say that might be enough, but I'm gonna go with the safe bet. New York has lost two games, so I'm gonna say New York's gonna walk away with the W, but it's gonna be another close one. I'm gonna say 3-2.
It's crazy to think on paper that New York has only lost 2 games this deep into stage 3. I mean, it's the halfway point, essentially. I mean, they're just nuts. So I just want to comment on that. And I completely agree that they have the edge, but we'll see. Our last match to round out week 2 of stage 3 is the 5 p.m. Pacific time, the Florida Mayhem versus the Boston Uprising. And due to recent developments with the roster of the Boston Uprising and the recent positive developments from the roster of the Florida Mayhem, I believe we're going to see Florida come out looking very strong in this map. A Boston team that's going to be in disarray. I believe they're going to suffer a pretty tough loss against New York from Thursday. They're going to come into this game a little bit psychologically broken, a little not as confident as they used to, and Florida is going to be riding the coattails of that Saya player confidence, and we're going to be a 3-1 victory. Mayhem, they're going to take a nice, easy win over Boston, and I want to see Boston do better. I think they have potential, but having such a hit to your roster at this point in the stage, in this point in the season, is just too hard to recover from, while these other teams are making these strides in the right direction. So, sorry to say, 3-1 Florida.
Yeah, like, when you're looking at Boston right now, you really need mistakes to kind of have a similar effect to, EQO or Snildo. I mean, that would be the best example, because those were 2 players that just came in and had a pretty big impact the moment that they started playing. So if mistakes can do that, then, Boston could definitely take this one. But, who knows? They both have a pretty tough lineup in regards to their schedule this week. But, a ton of great games this week. Really hard to, nail down what a game of the week would be. I think in my case, the one that I'm most invested in is probably the Spitfire Fusion game. But that Excelsior Outlaws game does intrigue me a lot. So, maybe Saturday we should just all hang out to catch those 2 games in particular. But, the Saturday lineups so far this age have been pretty impressive overall, and this week is no exception. But guys, we're running a little bit long here tonight, so let's go ahead and close out the show. So if you want to help us out, one of the best ways to do that is to leave us a positive review over on iTunes or your podcast and app of choice. Any sort of feedback or constructive criticism is always welcomed, and it'll offer us some insight on how we can make for a better listening experience. Or, you could always add us on Twitter saying how we are underestimating your team. So, we did kind of get that this week, and Boston did have a pretty standout week last week in terms of results. So I wouldn't say that I in particular have been underestimating them, just because I have had them in top 6 all season. But that is besides the point. But really, we want to hear feedback from you guys. That's the key thing. And we're always game for talking stats and just teams in general and Overwatch League and whatnot. We do have our game night coming up that is on Saturday, April 21st. That will be at 7 p.m. Pacific time. So expect another friendly night of community competitive games, which will be streamed live over on our Twitch channel, which we're at right now. I'll be streaming that. Spider might be streaming his point of view as well. So, come hang out, join us for, another night of trying to figure out how to actually deal with Brigitte as a main tank. Or basically anyone, because, she can basically 1v1 anyone. As I see, Slambo just dealing with everyone, just whipping them back and forth.
The flail.
Yeah.
Wailing the flail.
And of course, guys, I show this every week. We gotta keep doing it every week. We have our Overwatch League Network Pick'em League. We're giving out some great prizes. We got shirts, we got hats, we got loot boxes, we got Overwatch League gear, podcast gear. We got it all. We got end of stage prizes. We have end of season prizes. It's not too late to join. And with that, we have some updated standings. We have some shakeups this week. Not only is Slambo back, but he has moved up one spot. He is now tied with me in the pick'ems after my atrocious week 1 in Stage 3. So in first place, tied, we have the Soulmates, and no, we are not in collusion. This is not something that we're like, oh, well, I'm just gonna let Slambo pick up a few wins, and then I'll be like, oh, I'm just gonna crap the bed this week. No, that's not what happened. But
if you wouldn't mind doing that, that would be fine with me.
I'm sure you would absolutely love that. But right now, we're tied for first. That is at 41,500 points, and Spider locking down that third place as he always does. Is sitting at 34,150, and, there's a pretty big gap still, so best of luck to you, Spider, on trying to make that up in less than half of the overall season. But, that being said, a lot of movement there for Slambo this week, and who knows, it could be another week. The first few weeks are always, all over the place, so we gotta see how these teams adjust to the new meta and their new additions. All that good stuff. But Spider, why don't you go ahead and let everyone know where they can get a hold of us over on the social media?
All right, so first you can email the show at owlnshow@gmail.com. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter at owlnshow. Website is the same, www.owlnshow.com. Our YouTube, we still don't have that static link, but we're getting closer and closer. But you can search OWLN Show, Overwatch League Network, Overwatch Top Plays. I tagged the crap out of all our videos. So, and our top 5 plays for week 1 of Stage 3 should be coming up tonight, if not early tomorrow morning. So we have content coming up there all the time for you guys. You can catch us on our Discord, discord.me/OWLN Show. You can watch us on Twitch if you're listening to the audio. We do 3 shows a week. Our Twitch is twitch.tv/OWLN Show. Our Monday night show is what you're listening to currently, Overwatch League Network at 7 p.m. PDT. Wednesdays at 7 p.m. PDT, we have our Tier 2 / Contenders Path to Pro show, The Back Cap. And then Thursdays at 5 p.m. PDT, we have our variety Overwatch show, Heroes Never Die, where they go over the more general Overwatch and then also talk about some Overwatch League stuff. So really the variety Overwatch podcasts. You can find myself on Twitter at SpiderGD. You can send all your Boston love and all my hate mail. Just send it to me. I thrive on it. You can also catch me on Twitch at twitch.tv/SpiderGD. I've kind of worked out a streaming schedule, so that should start sometime soon once this big push at work finishes. So I'm hoping middle of the month. Slambo, I don't have to read yours off this week. So where can they find you?
Slambo hologram reboot. Okay, I'm just kidding. You can find me on Twitter at SlamboOverwatch and twitch.tv/Slambo on my dormant Twitch page. I hate adulting. Totem, take us home, baby. What about you?
All right. Well, you can find me over on the Twitter at TrulyDrunkCTR, questioning what B lineup Soul is running, or trying to stand up for Boston against the guy to my right. Spider.
Anti-Boston Spider over here.
I'm not anti-Boston. I don't believe in them.
He's just pro everyone else.
Exactly. I'm not negative against anybody. I'm just more on the train for other teams.
All right, well, I also do have a Twitch. I haven't really streamed there, but if you want to follow me, you can follow me there at twitch.tv/normallydrunk, or just find me here 3 nights a week, and sometimes 4 nights if, we're doing a game night. So, yeah. But, guys, that is going to do it for us here tonight on Overwatch League Network. Again, this has been episode 28. We finally got Slambo back on the show. He's still here. He is not fallen into an audio abyss this week. He didn't have to send us any MP3s or anything like that. And we have a great week of games ahead of us. So, be sure to tune in. Tell them how they can improve that Control Center feature for the All Access Pass so we can get, version 2.0 whenever that is ready to go. But for now, guys, have a good night, and we'll see you next week.
Au revoir.
Thank you for listening to the Overwatch League Network. Be sure to follow the show on Twitter at OWLN Show. The theme music for OWLN is the main theme and victory theme guitar remix by Michael Mack.